And we should be live for the Steelers Depot live stream here on Monday, January 25th. As always, Alex Kozora and Dave Bryan here to answer any and all of your Steelers questions for the next hour. So if you guys are new to the chat, you can ask a question. Dave and I will do our best to answer it. If you want your question to be guaranteed to be asked and answered by both of us, send us a super chat, and that'll get you to the front of the line on the Steelers question side of things. As always, Dave Bryan is here. Dave, how you doing?
Doing all right. Busy day, busy news day again today.
Yep, always something going on, even though it is the offseason. Steelers making a couple coaching hires official. They officially promoted Matt Canada to be the next Steelers offensive coordinator, replacing Randy Fichtner, and Alfredo Roberts is the new tight ends coach, replacing the long time, now retired James Daniels. So joining you guys for about an hour today. Dave may duck out a little bit early, but I'll be here at least until, I guess, probably 8 o'clock. And then if you need to see the archive version or replay of this, it'll get posted up on Steelers Depot a little bit later today. All right, so let's start with the first question here, and it is topical from Liv Loyal. Says, good evening, gentlemen. What are both of your thoughts about the two coaching moves that were made today? Canada was predictable. He's been the front runner for basically the entire time. I think the Steelers just wanted to be patient and thorough in this process, but really similar thoughts to what we had about a week ago when the report was that Canada was likely to be named the next offensive coordinator. We'll see how that relationship with Ben works in terms of Canada's college feel of jet motion and those kind of things, and being under center more, and how does that compromise work with Big Ben? Can it work? Sure. Will it work gracefully and fluidly, though? I think it still remains to be seen a little bit.
Yeah, you just wonder how much actual change Ben is going to allow.
Right.
Because that's kind of I think what it kind of boils down to. Obviously, we saw a lot of heavy motion early in the season last year. I don't know why they kind of got away from it as the season wore on. Obviously, didn't pass a lot off of that pre-snap motion. Want to see some more of that. Would like to see some more Ben under center. Would like to see possibly a little bit more. Look, one of the big things here is you want to see them be able to run a lot of different things out of a minimal amount of looks.
Mm-hmm.
You have a certain personnel grouping out there, be able to use that personnel grouping in 3, 4, 5 maybe different formations, and then run your whole entire offense out of that.
Right.
The more you can look like something, the more that you can look the same yet be entirely different is obviously the key to having a successful offense nowadays. And also, look, you got to push the football down the field. If anything, we've learned that over the last 2 or 3 seasons when it comes to Ben, and you're going to have to be able to run the ball with obviously more, with a higher success rate than what they've done the last 2 or 3 seasons on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think more than anything, I think we both agree that, there's probably not many people out there at this point, I don't think, that don't believe that, or don't think that Ben's not coming back, because
Right.
this certainly smells like Ben's coming back at this point.
Yeah, and the thoughts I had a week and a half ago when the first Canada news really surfaced was this was a team that knew they had to change something. They couldn't be status quo. Tomlin said as much in his postseason end of season presser. But this is still a team that values stability and continuity. And while I don't think the outside hire could have been or would have been as potentially catastrophic and like earth shattering as maybe the team thinks, obviously when you probably safely and reasonably predict that there won't be much of a spring, there won't be the OTAs and mini camps and things like that, to bring in a new OC to try to set up that system without the benefit of even that would be difficult to do when you're basically not able to implement your system until training camp and the season's a month away and you're just trying to get ready for the year, let alone learning an offense and working together as a unit, not just Ben. So I think that gave extra incentive to stay in-house with Canada, someone that is known to the team, but not someone that has been with the team forever, the way Randy Fichtner was. So I think the team's just trying to thread that needle between a known guy that is not new to Ben or to this team, but also a pretty young guy in terms of how long he's been with the organization, only 1 year, that hopefully can breathe a breath of fresh air into an offense that I think needs it. And then for Alfredo Roberts, I don't know a ton about him. When the hire made, I really couldn't tell you a thing about Alfredo Roberts, I'll be honest with you, Dave. But looking at his resume, more a long-time coach, been coaching in the NFL, save for 1 year since 2003. Long-time tight ends coach, running backs coach. So I kind of like that he's manned both positions, running backs and tight ends, to get that overall picture of the run game. But just a veteran coach, and I think that was important to have that similar guy after having such a veteran, long-time, respected tight ends coach like James Daniel.
Yeah, at least you got somebody with a little bit of age and a little bit of experience now in that room, and that's something that we've talked about here for the last couple of episodes. On the podcast, you look at what was left over after the recent non-contract renewals. It made sense to, and hopefully, the offensive line coach that they decide on here in the next, you would think pretty soon here,
Mm-hmm.
next day or two, at least by the weekend time, is one that also has some experience to him as well. When you look at Robert's resume, obviously time at Florida Atlantic University up until through I think 2002, and then has really been primarily a tight ends coach in the NFL since 2003. Coached some reputable names. Mercedes Lewis, I think, with the Jaguars, and Winslow for a couple years, I think, with the Browns. I think
Mm-hmm.
Winslow followed him over there to the Buccaneers. Obviously, with the Colts, Kobe Fleener and Dwayne, what was his
Dwayne Allen.
Allen. I think a former, what was he, first, second round pick
Mm-hmm.
there. So a couple good tight ends over there, and then obviously the last couple years been able to work with Hunter Henry and before that Antonio Gates over there with the Chargers as well too. So this guy should know a little bit about the tight end position, and look, coached a year with the running backs over there with the Chargers as well too, and their running game hasn't been half bad over there. So hopefully you got some run game coordination going on with him as well too. But you really, just a surface view on him over the last couple hours. All I know about Alfredo Roberts at this point.
Yeah, the one interesting thing in Robert's resume, he coached high school for 1 year randomly. He went from NFL to high school back to the NFL. I just would love to know the story there. Of just if that was like his kids team or something. That stuck out to me. Anyway. PlayDead0112 says, "Hey, Dave and Alex, why do you guys still consider Ben a franchise quarterback? He hasn't been in a couple of years. He struggled mightily the last 4 games, not counting the second half against the Colts." Yeah, I understand the question. I mean, we all understand that Ben, his best days are probably behind him, but um, what is the alternative? I guess is the question that I would pose back. I mean, you can still see, a lot of good in his game. I still think the good still heavily outweighs the bad, and how much he was in charge of this offense, how much he had to run this offense without any semblance of a run game after the first 4 games of the season, how much he put guys in the right spots and really manufactured those big plays probably doesn't get talked about enough. So obviously the last 4 months were a struggle, or last 4 games were a struggle not only for the offense or for Ben. I mean, the entire team struggled down the stretch and no one played well enough, obviously. So I wouldn't put it just on Ben. And I think we do need to remember that 11-0 start, and Ben was playing really well in that 11-0 start, and clearly the elbow surgery was a success, and that's not a hindrance. I mean, the arm strength is obviously debatable, but it's not that, it's not a Terry Bradshaw situation where he just wasn't able to come back from it. He's able to come back from it. His body feels good. So I just go in with the realization that Ben's going to be your quarterback next year, whether you like it or not.
What is the definition of franchise quarterback that
Sure.
the chatter is using there?
That's a
I
good
mean,
question.
what defines a franchise quarterback? I think one that obviously is pretty much tied to the franchise, like Ben has been for the last several years. For starters, for second, uh, uh, one that obviously knows what's going. Look, here's the long and short of it, and say what you will about the game against Cleveland in the playoffs there. Uh, yeah, I understand you falling behind and having to throw that much is going to play a part in it. But and I said this right after the game, I think in a podcast as well too. Quarterbacks just don't throw for 500 yards in games. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
don't care if you're down 42 to whatever, in the game. That just magically just doesn't happen willy nilly. Okay. So there is some level of accomplishment there, albeit not the kind you'd much rather him throw for 250 yards and the Steelers come away with the win. But look, he still showed that he can move the football down the field. Yes, the Browns were in prevent defense, but if that was just the case week in, week out, you'd have quite a few 500-yard passers throughout an NFL season, right?
Hmm.
If it was just that easy there. So yeah, their defense wasn't all that. Yeah, the Ben had to drop back and throw every time, but and look, it has been the same quarterback he was, 6, 7 years ago. Absolutely not, especially not when it comes to the deep ball there. But uh, call him a franchise quarterback still to this date than a non-franchise quarterback. So I guess it boils back to what is the chatter consider a franchise quarterback, the
Yeah,
definition of it.
I think that's a valid question. A couple of super chats here. One from Kevin Plays D for 99 cents. Doesn't look like there's a comment there, but thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. And a big super chat here from N. Lori, $10. Thank you so much. This is a comment appears to be on Dwayne Haskins. Says, young, immature, doesn't put in the work, reckless quarterback. Reminds me of articles 12 to 14 years ago. I assume that's a reference to Ben's early days. So I don't know if that's in terms of a put down at Haskins or just saying like, look at Ben, and look how he turned things around. So I'm not sure where you're coming in on that, but I understand the comparison there, and we'll see on Haskins. I mean, I know Dave and I talked about that extensively on Friday's show, and there's really no risk to it. I don't think the reward is terribly high either, but there obviously is nothing invested in the guy. So if he does not turn things around off the field, then you cut him and you really lose nothing in the process.
Just look at a raw tape to start with from the NFL. That's a starting point. Forget about the whole immaturity, 5 cent head, or bad decisions. Look, kids make mistakes. I am the poster child for kids making mistakes. But just look at the raw tape and raw ability past that. And then, I even went back and looked a little bit at his final year at Ohio State there. A lot of wide open receivers in that offense, back at Ohio State. So really and then I've already obviously broken down his deep passes from the last couple his first 2 seasons in the NFL. His mechanics are a mess. There's just not a lot to really other than raw look, he's got velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to ever argue with that. When the kid lets loose of the football, he just don't know where it's going. He can put some mustard on it, and obviously he's better shorter area than he is long area. But outside of just raw velocity, I mean, that's all that we're dealing with here. So, look, as Alex has pointed out, I think tremendously and tried to make the point clear since the signing in a couple of times that we talked about him is what are you going to get accomplished with this kid on the practice field between now and the start of training camp? And the answer is not much at all. So you're going to get into training camp and then you're going to try to be you're going to expect this kid to put in what you've done virtually right into with whatever Matt Canada's offense. They're not going to tailor an offense around Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins is going to have to tailor himself to what the offense is, and then all of a sudden you're expecting this kid to come on a practice field and just do. I mean, I think the expectations for something magical to happen there are really few and far between. And even if he does stick around as the number 3, how much time is he going to get in practices and all throughout the season there? So look. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I get it. All right, this guy's got the kid's got pedigree. We know Kevin Colbert can't stay away from that. So, but I mean, please excuse us for not doing cartwheels yet.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't see what the best case scenario is in terms of what is the real upside here. He's your number 3 for all of 2021. Let's assume he stays on the straight and narrow. And then what? I mean, you tender him, I guess, in 2022, and maybe he competes for a backup spot, but I just don't know what the opportunity he'll have to really prove himself comes in, at least in the short term. But I mean, he's on the roster.
Goal number 1 is for him to make it out of training camp to the 53-man roster as the number 3. That's
just
goal
make
number
it
1.
to training camp, make sure he doesn't do anything. Yeah. He's got 6 months of, he's got to do the right things.
Right. Let's get to that point, and then let's move the line in the sand from there. I mean, to think 6 years ahead, 4 years, 2 years ahead, I think is foolish right now when it comes to him. Let's get him to different tracking marks in the sand and go from there. And really, the next one is, can he make it all the way through the summer, and then can he make it all the way through camp, and then can he make the roster, the 53-man roster, as the number 3? That's the starting point.
Right. Yeah, it's just hard to take on this project when you really don't get to even talk to him again in person, at least until late July, August, assuming there is no, OTAs, which seems likely at this point, which is just a tough way to start that journey.
Hey,
Uh,
you want something to look forward to is the Hall of Fame game right now,
yeah,
because
be
he
nice.
he'll probably get a. I mean, assuming he lasts that long,
Right.
that might be the one game that you get to see a lot of Dwayne Haskins in for all of 2021. So that's a line in the sand right there to look
Yeah.
forward to with him as it goes.
Assuming there is a Haskins on the roster, assuming there is a Hall of Fame game, two things that I couldn't tell you
Yep.
right now. I mean, hopefully, but we'll see. Back to the questions here. Mark Leslie, more of a comment, says with Matt Canada and Chase Claypool, the Canadian Revolution is going to take us to number 7. Put your money on it now, Alex. Mark's trying to make me lose all my money over here, but I appreciate the comment. Mike Adesso says, great podcast today, guys. Really appreciate going into the hypotheticals. I know you're not a fan of that. You saved me from asking like 10 questions tonight. He says, Alex, I enjoyed your mock today. That is what you guys see on screen right now. Was wondering about the running back Gainwell. How's his pass pro? That is the only thing you didn't mention in the mock or on podcast. Is he an every down back like Kamara? I have not studied Kenneth Gainwell's pass pro too much. I need to look into his game overall more, to be honest with you, Mike. But I just think he's a playmaker. I think you've seen the success of guys like Darrell Henderson, Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard. I know he played in more of an outside zone system, but I think he can work in the NFL as a space player. Just hopefully, I think a do-it-all back, a threat in the receiving game, all those kind of elements that the Steelers team needs and kind of lacks at running back right now. McFarland is in the mix, yes, but McFarland's presence and status is not going to stop this team from drafting a running back early in this draft. Xander in Oregon says, happy sunny winter's day from Oregon. Thank you, Xander. Thank you guys for being here. Again, be sure to ask your questions. Dave and I will answer them. Super chats will get you to the front of the line. Mike T-Rack says, Alex, I like the mock 1.0. O-line will be a priority this year. Need to get younger up front. Absolutely, Mike. I think you're going to see heavy investments in the offensive line, not only for the obvious losses that could happen, whether that's Marquise Pouncey's potential retirement, the likelihood that Alejandro Villanueva has played his last down as a Steeler, Matt Fowler also a free agent, the lack of depth, really interior and also on a tackle, and just the fact that this team could not run the football last year. And you'll see, I think, a high priority placed on getting that run game going, having some better semblance of balance and at least more efficiency, effectiveness, especially in short yardage, goal line, 4-minute offense, situational type things where this offense and this run game could not do anything in that respect after the first month of last season. So I think you'll see a heavy impact on O-line, the run game. That is why my mock draft starts with O-line, running back, O-line. And I think that's quite possible actually how it goes come April.
Got to invest in that offense for sure, heavily. Like we said on the podcast this morning, I'll be shocked if the first pick isn't offense, and really possibly shocked if the second pick isn't offense as well too. Now, obviously, they will draft a defensive player or 2 or 3 along in this thing, but. Man, if you seriously think that you're going to have a shot to compete, and if Ben comes back and all like that, you're gonna have some holes in that offense. And tight end too, where you've been hollering for a tight end for how long? How are you gonna wedge one in those first 2 picks? When it comes to that, that's another area that they're gonna probably. I wonder what Alfredo thinks about that tight end room he's walking into right now.
Yeah, it's a pretty young room, Ebron aside, and so I think having that veteran coach will help those guys, and hopefully they add another young new face in the room in April. I mean, we'll see. They're not have not invested in the position heavily as I've ranted about, but we'll see if that changes this year. Ken also says, Ken Niedermeyer, like to stream, everybody, get the traffic up for these guys. Thank you, Ken. If you guys could like to stream, we greatly appreciate that. Back to the questions here from the top. Steeler Nation Highlights says, I still feel that if we hit the nail on the head, that drafting O-line, the Steelers can still be a major threat in 2021. I think this roster will have taken a step back, but I hear what you're saying, Steeler Nation Highlights, where this is still a playoff team, still a team that can compete and win the AFC North, although I think it'll be ultra competitive, even more so in 2021 than it was in 2020. But the point I made on the podcast today was I think this Steelers philosophy and Colbert and Tomlin still think they have a chance because they still have a legit playoff team. If you just get in the hunt and get in the tournament, you give yourself a chance. And all it takes is just one good game or someone else's injury or whatever the case is, and you win, and it's just a survive and advance scenario. So until they're no longer viewed as a competitive, realistic playoff team, they're not going to hit that reset button on this offense, on this organization overall, because they know if they get in the tournament, they give themselves a chance. Who knows what could happen from there? Back in 2005, no one gave this team a chance as the 6th seed, but they won 3 games on the road, won a Super Bowl because of it. So you just give yourself the opportunity. And so as long as you have been, as long as you're still a playoff competitive team, you're always going to have that let's go for it mentality.
Although we're not going to have the optimism that we had going into the 2020 season. That's for sure.
Yep, that was the season, and unfortunately, it ended extremely in disappointment. Kevin plays D. This was maybe the question you had associated with the super chat. I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but what do you think about us picking up Haskins? I've heard some people calling him a lost cause. I think it just references the conversation Dave and I just had. Lost cause might be too tough. I mean, we've seen guys turn their careers, their lives around. Chris Carter made mention of this. Obviously, how things started for him in Philadelphia and didn't do the right things, and he worked things out in Minnesota, became one of the best receivers of his era. So I'm not going to say Haskins can't turn things around or that he's a lost cause. Much of his success and his journey will be up to Dwayne Haskins and whether or not he puts in the work and does the right things and kind of takes advantage of this clean slate and maybe the weight coming off of him, no longer the first-round pick, no longer the franchise heir, the way he was tabbed and expected to be in Washington. Maybe that helps him. Who knows? But much of Haskins' success or lack thereof will be up to Dwayne Haskins. Question here about Maurkice Pouncey from Duck Swagger says, how is Pouncey's overall 2020? Will it be a big loss if he decides to retire, or is he starting to diminish and better off drafting a center? I mean, again, there is clearly some decline in play. The snaps at least weren't as bad, in 2020 as they were in 2019, although obviously the wildcard game was abysmal in that snap. But I think the biggest place where you feel the loss is the veteran leadership. I mean, he's a core guy. He's someone that everyone looks towards and just that leader for Ben and for the room overall and for the team. But, I mean, who are you going to replace Maurkice Pouncey with if he's gone? It's not an in-house guy. It's not J.C. Hassenauer. So you're compelled to either get a free agent, and it's not a lot of money to work with there, obviously, or you got to draft somebody and hope they can be plug and play as that new center. So I think the biggest place where you feel that loss is who on earth is your center if it's not Maurkice Pouncey.
I'm guessing a lot of you guys don't remember Sean Mahan.
Try not to.
Oh Lord! Look, I know nobody's going to go out here and say Maurkice Pouncey's an All-Pro center, even though he evidently received some votes, right? I wonder where that came from, but just the overall experience, and look, he's still got some ability to him. He can still get on the hoof and get out there in space for you. Obviously, he's not regarded or shouldn't be regarded as a top center in the NFL right now. But and just the continuity factor and all. You know, are you really going to get? You know, it's going to be hard to get unless you get the best center in the country to come in, you know, via the draft and plug and play. It's kind of hard to get a guy to come off the street to do that, you know, and do it effectively and all. And you got a veteran quarterback and all. I just, you know, my gut still tells me that it's one more ride for Pouncey and Roethlisberger. And yeah, I realize what the reports have been the last a week or so on Pouncey and all like that. But I just find it hard to imagine, one riding without the other here for at least one last go. But we'll obviously see. And look, if Pouncey does retire, then I don't know. Alex and I talked a lot about B.J. Finney, although it's not ideal. At least maybe it's a little bit of a stopgap to get you a rookie ready or something like that. So that could be an option. They're not going to have any money to spend on the position. Nope. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you could see a lot of potential reunions. Come on back, Jesse James. Come on back, B.J. Finney. We missed you guys. We need you guys. Please sign for very cheap. I think that'll be the offseason approach that they have. And, yeah, we'll see. I don't know what Pouncey's decision is. I don't know if Maurkice Pouncey knows what his decision is right now. But I suspect that Ben will at least be in his ear trying to convince him to come back and say, Pounce, me and you, one more year. Let's go for it because we do want to go out together. That was the pact we made. 2021 is going to be my last year. Make it your last year too. And once your body feels a little bit better, a couple of weeks from now, and your mind's a little bit clearer, and you get that urge to play again, my gut is the same as yours, Dave. Where Pouncey says, "All right, I'm going to give it one last ride," but we'll see. Don't know where his head's at.
And look, the Steelers need to be committed to this too. This just can't be the farewell tour. They got to be committed to it as best as they can. And obviously, they're not going to have the cap dollars to to go out there. So they're going to have to invest in the draft right from the get go, and they're going to have to try to get what they can out of the Kevin Colbert bargain bin on top of it to maybe fill a hole or two, and maybe that's comes into play with potentially, and obviously Jesse James. We would get in trouble for tampering right now.
Sure.
But I think it's something that you and I have entertained for quite a while now.
Hmm.
But the possibility of Jesse James maybe coming back and seeing what happens with BJ Finney and along those lines there. So they're going to have to be committed. It's just not Pouncey and Roethlisberger show up and expect to for this thing to get further than it got in 2020 that way. You're going to have to be committed to it, and obviously Canada and all like that. And look, Roethlisberger's going to have to be committed to to change it schematically a little bit on offense too, doing some
Right.
things maybe that he's uncomfortable doing.
And just quickly in regards to Jesse James, he's still under contract with Detroit, but I strongly suspect the Lions will cut him. I mean, James has done nothing as a receiver in his 2 years there, and new coaching staff, and they have Hawkinson. I mean, I don't know exactly the Lions' financial situation, but given that most teams are going to be cutting than retaining, I think James probably gets cut at some point here before March 17th.
I even thought maybe that might be have a chance of even happening last offseason with him.
Right.
And I don't know how many. I had to look and see how many total snaps that Jesse James played last season, but he's scheduled to earn. Let's see, he's scheduled to earn $5 million from the Lions. That's quite a bit for a guy that only plays the amount of snaps that he plays.
Right. I think he had his fewest receptions since his rookie year, so he was not involved in the offense too much.
Right, and how many? Obviously Dan Campbell, the new head coach, is a former tight end, though. So there might. I don't know how that plays into it, but
we'll see. We'll keep you posted. Marjorie Geyer with a cap question. Assume this is directed for you, Dave. I'll toss it that way. Can you explain the money that is left over or carried over from the 2020 salary cap into 2021? Doesn't specify the question, but just point out, Dave, how much money that is and how does cap rollover work in the first place?
All right, they allow teams. When you're talking about cap, you're talking about cap space. Now, there's also teams have rules in the CBA that they that the league wide cap. It used to be. I don't know if it's gone up. It might have gone up just a hair bit, but over a certain amount of years, I think it was every 4 years that they had to spend 89% of the total league cap number in cash to the players. So that's a way to make sure that teams weren't sitting on, they make sure that teams weren't sitting on cash,
Yeah, they weren't pulling up Pirates and keeping the payroll super low.
Right. They have minimums that teams have to spend in cash over certain, and I think it was for 4 year period times. I haven't read up on that in a while to see how that percentage would change. Obviously, if it was up to the NFLPA, they would like 95, 98% of the cap dollars spent in cash every year by teams. But obviously that's not going to happen there. Now the Steelers are coming out of the 2020 season, and if you go to the NFLPA.com site, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see public salary cap report, and that's a running total throughout the year. Now, it doesn't tell you specifically player information, but that thing will change as things are filed with the NFLPA. And the Steelers are coming out of the 2020 season with $4.95 million and some change left over in cap space, and there's stipulations in the CBA that if teams want to, they can roll over the cap dollars. Now, obviously, in rolling over those cap dollars, you have to spend, once again, percentage over the 4 year span in cash and all like that. So I guess that would be the only incentive not to roll over cap space is if you didn't want to spend it in cash or whatnot. But I think you're going to see teams, most definitely any team that had any cap space left over. I think there's only just been a few times since the new CBA anyway that teams haven't rolled over all their unused cap space from the previous year there. But the Steelers have $4.95 million and they'll roll that over. So you would treat that as kind of, what you do is you take whatever the league wide cap number winds up being, which we don't know that number, but let's say it was 180 million,
Hmm.
and then let's say you rolled over $5 million, your workable your workable cap number then that you're dealing with then would technically be 185 million that you're dealing with there.
Okay,
So
right.
that's kind of the starting point there. But go to the NFLPA site, NFLPA.com, Marjorie, and you can see the public salary cap report for yourself there. And you can download. I do this daily. I go there and you can download the PDF from it every day.
Mm.
And I've got a whole folder on my hard drive that
My
I
goodness.
label them every day because I usually go back and reference them, and I want to see what the change was from one day to the other and try to back out maybe what a contract cost was or something along those lines.
I did not know you did that. That is dedication. You might be the only man to download the NFLPA salary report every single day, but that is why you are the expert on all things Steelers salary cap.
I'm also obsessive compulsive too, so
That
these
helps.
things kind of
They go hand in hand.
play together here.
A couple of ones I'll go through quickly here. Captain Spartan says, "What podcast do we go over potential cap casualties?" I mean, we've talked about that throughout a lot of episodes. I think one of last week's show we mentioned it. We go over Vince Williams and Hayden. We talked about that on some of today's show as well. So just really listen to the last couple episodes, Captain Spartan, and it kind of gets mixed in throughout. There isn't a real dedicated episode to cap casualties. Let me go back up.
And really, there's not many to talk about this year. I mean, unless you're going to add Ben into the discussion, are you really going to cut Joe Hayden? I suppose that's one name you could toss around. Vince Williams is obviously another big name. Well, we no longer have to talk about Vance McDonald being a potential cap casualty there. Derek Watt's probably another name that you would discuss, but really, outside of that, if David DeCastro tells you he wants to play, you're probably not going to cut him. I don't think he comes into the equation. And I guess Marquise Pouncey is someone that we're kind of waiting. It's hard to imagine them cutting him. It come down to whether or not he wants to play or not, and that's it with him. So there's really not, overall, not many cap casualties, I don't think, to discuss here.
Rob James says, so if Ben and Pouncey both return, does that put a damper on the Castro staying? I mean, I think the Castro's staying regardless of what Ben and Pouncey do, especially if you lose Villanueva and Pouncey were to retire, then I think you're not going to also dump the Castro. Even if Pouncey comes back, I still think you keep the Castro. Is there any chance the Castro could be a cap casualty, though, Dave?
Man, I don't see it, Alex.
Yeah. Because who are you going to replace? Again, I mean, you're going to replace him with.
Right. And if you cut him, let's see, if you cut him pre-June 1st, obviously you would save, the $8.75 million. But I mean, you got to replace him too. And who would you use to replace him? And this assumes that you're losing Filer as well too, right? So obviously you would, you could say, okay, well, Dotson's going to replace DeCastro at right guard. Okay, that's all fine and good, but who's going to be your left guard?
Right.
And so if I still look, we'll find out a little bit more as the offseason goes on as far as player surgeries go and stuff like that. I won't be shocked if we find out that David DeCastro had, I don't know, core muscle or knee or whatever worked on, because he sure didn't look like himself for a good portion of the season there. So from where I sit right now, and you probably feel the same way, I would be surprised if DeCastro is not playing in 2021.
Agreed. Obviously, I don't have the insight the team does, but I'd be more willing to bet his poor play at times in 2020 was more related to injury than just simply him falling off. But the team would have a better gauge of that than I would. I mean, for example, Vance McDonald in 2019 was pretty bad, and I think it was clearly an injury nagging him. He was better in 2020, so hopefully the same is the case for David DeCastro, because 2 years ago he was still playing like normal, really good David DeCastro. Brenton717 is asking about, should we expect more passing to tight ends, possibly more 2 tight end sets with the new tight ends coach in there? Probably not. I don't think the tight ends coach is going to dictate that too much. It's really going to be about OC and just personnel overall. So I don't think the tight ends coach is going to really change that too much.
I have no problem with a team running a lot of 2 tight end sets as long as you got the right 2 tight ends. And Eric Ebron ain't one of those 2 tight ends in my opinion there. Obviously we'll have to see, look, if Jesse James should come back, that gives you one option to use as a blocker there. And obviously if you keep an Ebron at the money that you're keeping them at. You're not going to pay them to stay in on the sideline for most of the time there. But they're going to have to find a way to definitely run better out of the two tight end sets.
Yeah, you use two tight ends when you have two good tight ends like a Kobe Fleener or Dwayne Allen when those were high pedigree, high draft pick guys, and that is not the case right now in Pittsburgh unless they do something in the draft. And they're just a base
Right.
11 personnel team anyway because they got a talented receiver. Let me scroll down through here. Big Mama talking about doing a video on Ben season. We might do that. I mean, I've obviously referenced it. We've had long discussions about Ben throughout the season. Maybe we'll do an off-season video dedicated to the good and bad of Big Ben. Let's see. Got some questions about TJ Watt, the rumor report, whatever you want to call it, about him frustrated skipping the exit interview. I don't know. I mean, I have no inside information there, but I don't. I take it with a grain of salt. And what does it change? Does that mean TJ Watt's not going to get a mega extension in the summer? He's going to get a mega extension in the summer. So even if there was some frustration for whatever reason, which who knows if that's even true or not, maybe he just went home to Wisconsin and because of COVID or whatever, and someone's trying to make up a reason of why he did. Who knows? But I don't think it changes the circumstances about TJ Watt or his future with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's see. Senior Bowl. Mike was asking about Senior Bowl specifics and players we're looking for. I'll just kind of watch and just with a blank slate. I haven't really studied it too much right now, Mike. But I know the Senior Bowl is about to kick off, and we're certainly keeping a close eye on that. Steeler Nation asking about if I have any Denzel Mims favorite guys so far. It's really too early overall, but I was really impressed with Najee Harris, the running back from Alabama, and I get everyone's going to yell at me and say that we can't take a running back at 24. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying if you put the positional value and all that aside for a second, Harris is a really good prospect, and I came away incredibly impressed with his game, even knowing the talent he was working with at Alabama, one of the best teams in football, the best team in football. Harris is, I think, a back with very few obvious flaws in his game. Thoughts on Diami Brown, wide receiver, North Carolina? I haven't gotten to him yet. Charlie, I apologize. Hopefully you can ask me in a couple weeks. Hopefully I can give you a better answer. Nolan McGuire says, I feel like this will be a good year for the Steelers to trade back if there's a good offer. They don't really have a precedent for it, but more picks, the better this year. I'm with you, Nolan. I mean, I've suggested that for a while now. I think in these difficult years to draft where the information is more limited, just the more darts you have to throw the dartboard, the better odds you have at hitting. So the more picks, the merrier. Now, they will have some comp picks to work with this year, which will be helpful. And it's hard to envision trade down scenarios until you're on draft day and you see what the board looks like, what options you have in terms of moves to move down or whatever the case is, the specifics are. So it's really hard to gauge it until you're on the clock basically, or almost on the clock. But I think in principle, I agree with you, Nolan. Let me try to find a couple more questions here. Someone asked me, I think Paul Brown asked me about would the Steelers take a tight end higher? And I've been advocating that for a while. I just think their focus will be on the run game. And so unless they find a really good blocking tight end too, I think the focus is going to be on O-line and the run game because that is where the largest needs, I think, loom for this team at the moment. Let me look here. Amin Whitefield says Pouncey is done, and I'm a Steelers fan. All right. Builder's Life says, please know Jesse James is timid. He's not a football player. Well, I don't know. I think it's a number 2. I think I'd be fine with Jesse James. You don't want to be your starter, but as a number 2, he's durable, he's reliable, and I'd be happy to bring him back. Mike's also asking about will we have any articles on potential quarterback coach hires? I don't know if we'll do that, though, but it does sound like this team will hire a quarterback's coach. I think that's the right approach, Dave. Do you agree?
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I don't know. Is Matt Sims?
Maybe.
Is that a guy they might promote? I mean, I would like to think that a quarterback coach probably don't make all that much with the Steelers. So, and also you're probably going to want to get somebody that Matt Canada, Matt Canada's going to have to work with this guy as well too. Along with the quarterbacks there. It would make sense that Matt Sims gets the promotion there, but we'll see. I don't think we're going to have a huge article on it. I mean, it's hard enough to come up with offensive line coach candidates right now, and I mean, yeah, I doubt we're going to have an article on that.
I agree. Kevin Burns, what are the chances we trade up for Trey Lance? I would say remote, but I think you could say that about any one specific player, about the odds of trading up for him, unless this is a Devin Bush and it's kind of obvious that they like him. As we sit here today, I think the odds are low. Not impossible, but low. Why did we lose to the Browns from Christian Perar? Yeah, I ask myself every day. But turnovers, lack of splash plays defensively, that's a good way to lose when you are -5 in the turnover battle.
Yep.
Not John Cena says, you Steelers suck. All right. That is from commentary from not John Cena. Let's see. This is from AJC. Does every starting quarterback take a vet day like Ben does after a game? Did Ben take those early in his career? I'm sure not everyone does, but not every quarterback is 38, 39 years old. So I think that is just smart management. It's the basketball or the football equivalent of load management.
Nobody likes it, but he's done it for years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I would expect it to continue if he comes back for another season.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to change at all, and I don't think that is the reason why there's been success or failure with this offense. Dust Thunder 9, I should say, says, we need to give Ben more time. When I rewatched the Browns game, I realized almost all the interceptions he threw when he was being chased down by defenders. I'd have to go back through them all. I mean, some of that is true for sure, but Ben did not play well that game. I mean, that's just, I think, a fact. I mean, very few guys played well that game. Signed Stafford. Well, Stafford is still under contract. You'd have to trade for Stafford, and unless Ben retires or the team cuts him, Stafford's not going to be in play. So until one of those two things happen, we cannot have any sort of conversation about Matthew Stafford.
There's an article on the site. I indulged you people on it. You better read it because I don't do that very often when it comes to nonsense such as that. But if you want a plausible way for that to happen, I have it all outlined for you, but it starts first and foremost with either Ben retiring or the Steelers retiring Ben in the next 2 weeks, and that's where it starts. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but people get mad whenever we just brush them off and don't talk about things that we don't think are going to happen. So I did it. So there it is.
There you go. You can see the article. I'll scroll through it here. Mike Camp says, hey, Alex, would you agree with the offensive line at 24 if Harris is not there, if he has pulled the trigger? Even if Harris is there, I think offensive line is still the leader. You guys saw my mock draft today. I went Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama, at 24 over a running back. So I think offensive line is still where you want to build this team, this run game from. You build it inside out. I think the team will feel the same way, probably. But if it's not, if there's a big run on tackles or if the value and the grade of a Najee Harris for the team is just so much higher than an offensive lineman, whoever the best guy available on the board still is, you may go Najee Harris, as much as that may upset some fans. I think he is a really talented back, someone that can be that every down running back and make a big impact in the passing game. If he was just a pure runner, then I think I'd have a lot more reservations about taking him. But the fact that he looks so comfortable as a receiver and being split out wide and running receiver routes and making combat catches. Those are things that take you to a different level where you just don't see that too often from anyone, let alone a back that's listed at, 6'2", 230. I mean, just the way he moves reminds me so much of Le'Veon Bell, and that's just a big talent that you can't put your blinders on and ignore. Let's see. M. Laurie says, Alex, you seem to like the tackle and center out of Alabama. If you had both on the board at 24, who do you take? I take Leatherwood over Landon Dickerson, I should say, because of the value of the left tackle is greater than the center, and mainly because of the medical. Dickerson has a lot of medical red flags that may take him off the Steelers board entirely. Dude's got 2 torn ACLs, just tore his ACL a couple months ago, 2 season-ending ankle surgeries in his career, so there is a lot of medical to go through that obviously information we won't be too privy of. He'll probably be off some teams' boards medically, potentially Pittsburgh's. And so Landon Dickerson probably wouldn't be in play until the start of the second round, and he could slip into the third round because of the injury history. That is an obvious concern. Paul Brown, why does PFF have the Steelers and Saints as the number one Stafford trade destination? Arguably the 2 worst salary cap situations in the league. I couldn't tell you, Paul. I didn't even know they had that there, but I would put very little stock into it for the reasons you mentioned, the cap situation being just a mess right now for both teams.
Well, once again, you can get Stafford to the Steelers, but it starts with turning loose of Ben Roethlisberger, and then you got to trade the pick to Detroit. Then you have to turn around and take Stafford and restructure the $20 million that he's due in 2021. Now, why they consider that one of the top 2 landing spots? I don't know. I mean, look, people print everything. The major media sites print crap every day, and
Mm-hmm.
does it, because they print it, does it make it more plausible than us telling you that it won't happen? I mean, that's up for you guys to decide. I mean, hopefully you'd put more stock into things that we say than people that don't follow the team every day.
Right. I saw a funny tweet from PFF. It was Mike Renner, who I like Mike. He's a friend, but his tweet was, if you don't have Tyreek Hill as the best receiver in football, you're just looking at stats. You're not watching the tape. And then someone put up the screen grab of where they ranked Tyreek Hill as their 17th best receiver in football this season. So that just made me laugh for a moment there. So I like PFF. No one's going to get everything right. You can always, throw barbs at someone's commentary, especially when they do it on a league-wide basis. But I would not put the Saints and the Steelers as the top 2 destinations for Stafford. The Colts probably seem like maybe the most logical place that Stafford would end up.
And look, I mean, we subscribe to PFF, and we continue because we like a lot of what PFF does, but it doesn't mean that we like everything that PFF does. A lot of the stuff that we subscribe. Look, I like looking at their grades. I like looking at some of their game grades and breakdowns, and match up who they blame coverage TDs on versus who we blame them on. We find a lot of mistakes that way, but on the flip side, they get a lot of stuff right. So I mean, it's subjective when you get into grading and stuff like that. I don't think they're I don't think they're worthless. Obviously, we've been Steelers Depot and really all of us guys have been subscribers to them for years, and will continue to. But it doesn't mean that we buy everything that they're selling and listing the Steelers is top 2 destination for Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, for Matthew Stafford is kind of ludicrous, really.
Mm-hmm. Builder's Life says, of all our free agents, who's the must resign? I say Sutton and Juju. I don't know if there's one guy that is clearly head and shoulders above the others. I just want to make sure somebody gets signed, to at least plug one hole, so you're not losing half your roster, it feels like, in one off season. I think the value of a Mike Hilton or a Cam Sutton, the versatility they bring you, is hard to replace, at least replace quickly in the draft with a rookie. But Juju, again, there's a ton of value there as well. So I don't know if there's one name I put above all else. I just want to try to at least bring 1 or 2 of those guys back, just to give you some foundation, so there aren't these just giant holes as you head into free agency where you're not going to be able to do much, and then the draft where you're counting on a rookie to play where he may not have a lot of experience in the spring to get ready for the season. So I guess that's just my macro picture thought of the situation. Is there any name that jumps out to you, or you feel like they got to keep this free agent, Dave?
I mean, obviously, you'd like to see him be able to retain somebody who can play in the slot, right? So from a feasibility factor, you wouldn't think that Hilton would be that guy. So that leaves you at Sutton, and you'd like to see them be able to maybe get in a position where they could do something with Juju. But if you had push come to shove, which one are you going to choose? Probably Sutton, I would think. Maybe I think you could get by without having Juju. You have to have some people step up, obviously, and you probably have to go into the draft and get another one. But it would be one of those 2 for sure: Sutton or Juju.
And Lori, I think another super chat, so thank you so much. Says, Alex, congrats on the house. Thank you. We will all miss the train going by. Well, you guys will. I will not. It has been bliss without the train. Says, go get yourself a pressure cooker. Thanks for all that you and Dave provide us. Thank you, M. Laurie. Actually have an Instapot. That was a Christmas gift from a friend, so hopefully I can do a little bit more cooking in the new house. Let me scroll back up here for a couple more questions before we end the stream. Let's see. Saloon says, fantastic show. Thank you so much. Could you rank our quarterbacks on the roster today? Old Ben, his words, not mine, Mason and Haskins, in terms of arm strength, accuracy, pocket presence, and mobility. I would say Mason has a better arm than Ben. Is that fair to say, Dave?
Yeah, distance wise, maybe not velocity wise.
Yeah,
maybe
just
overall arm strength. Probably Mason. Velocity wise, I think we saw Ben put some mustard on a few of them hot dogs this year, right?
Right. I guess arm strength in terms of just downfield throwing ability. How would you rank it? Because Haskins has an arm, but as you said, he can't place it anywhere. Everything's on the line.
Haskins can zip it, but accuracy is definitely not. I mean, I would rank them just the way they're ranked. From now, how does he want them ranked now? Tell it to me again.
Well, in a couple of different categories, but arm strength is where we're starting at. Rank him in terms of arm strength.
Overall arm strength.
Yeah, I guess however you define arm strength. I would go Mason.
I don't know. Haskins got a good arm. He just don't
right.
know. It's like Nuke Lelouch. You don't know where it's going to go. You know. I mean, the kid can flick it. Now the mechanics ain't all that, but I mean he can put those things on a line. And now here's the thing. If you go back and look at the first 2 years in with Washington. What's his furthest throw? I mean, I haven't really seen him sling one, like 60 yards or something like that. But I mean, he could definitely put it out there in a hurry.
He only has 2 career touchdowns that weren't in the red zone, that didn't start inside the opponent's 20.
Say that again?
He only has 2 non-red zone touchdowns in his career. He's got 12 total touchdowns. 10 of them came in the red zone, and both of them were Scary Terry running after the catch. One was for 75 yards. It was like a 15-yard dig, and McLaurin did the rest of it. And the other was a 24-yard touchdown to McLaurin. That was another dig. He took the rest of the way. So, I mean, the arm strength might be there, but the big plays off of it just have not been there. So I would rank it Mason, Ben, Haskins in terms of arm strength. The other categories, accuracy, pocket presence, and mobility, I think Ben is number 1 in all of those, probably Mason 2. Haskins 3, mobility, they're all just tied for last. They're all just equally immobile quarterbacks. Maybe Haskins is the best. All right, Just Facts says sign Mark Ingram. I'm going to pass on signing Mark Ingram. Just the facts. K. Jackson Pittsburgh says, what are your thoughts on BYU quarterback Zach Wilson as a potential Steelers pick? You better be picking in the top 5 to get Zach Wilson. I know you're a big fan of Wilson, or at least you warmed up to the idea of him, right?
Oh, with BYU right now, I mean, I'm not deep into any of these guys' tape right now, but I have watched a lot of BYU tape so far, mainly because I'm looking at that wide receiver, and I've seen a lot of Trask just from highlight standpoint, and low lights, but I haven't watched him on a game by game situational, snap, the way you're supposed to watch tape on him. I haven't gotten that far on him yet. Obviously, I've watched a lot of the Clemson kid over the years and all like that. But I mean, does he have the arm strength? Lawrence. I mean,
you think it's a question?
I think that's a question there. I worry about the North Dakota State kid just from the sheer fact of competition and really just a 1-year college player. From where I sit right now, and obviously that can change, the BYU kid's probably going to, at least in where I'm sitting right now, 1 or 2. I would think, but okay. Obviously, look, I don't think. I think a lot of people are going to, and it happens every year. They overdraft quarterbacks just because you need one, and these are going to be the top 4 or 5 in the class there. So now, look, I haven't looked at the BYU kid closely enough to look at him being able to extend plays and all like that. I'm just talking like pure raw decision making and passing and accuracy and that kind of stuff. He's impressive, man.
Yeah, I think the Steelers will have no chance to get Zach Wilson because he will be off the board by number 5. I think he's probably the second quarterback off the board behind Trevor Lawrence, and so he will not be in play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. For the Steelers to take a quarterback, it would be maybe a trade up for Trey Lance, or if they stay at 24, you'd be talking about Mac Jones from Alabama or Kyle Trask from Florida, who, by the way, Trask will not work out at the Senior Bowl this week because of an ankle injury, which is a disappointment for him.
Yeah, not a great start to the pre-draft process. Look, it's not going to ruin him, but you certainly would like to have him able to participate at the Senior Bowl and the things that go along in the pre-draft process. But his tape is his tape, though, so it's just disappointing because of how truncated now the pre-draft process is as it is now, and then you're not going to be able to really get anything out of him at the Senior Bowl here.
Last note to go out on for today's live stream. I don't have the tweet pulled up, but people are saying that TJ Watt has responded to Mark Madden's tweet and is flaming Mark Madden for his characterization of Madden's report or rumor of that Watt was frustrated and blew off the exit interview. So I don't know exactly what TJ Watt said, but I assume he was shooting that report down, which is what we said. I take that stuff with a grain of salt. And
consider the source, people.
Right. Do you know what Watt said? I don't want to navigate Twitter.
I'm not going to repeat. It's not worth it.
Okay, fair enough. But good to have the response there in the chat. So that's going to wrap up today's live stream. Thank you guys so much for being here. Again, this will be archived, replayed over on Steelers Depot in a little bit if you guys want to go back and revisit our conversation. We may start doing it every other week with the live stream now. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go, but check the community tab on my channel. I'll keep you guys posted on any updates and changes to the live stream schedule. So thank you guys for being here. And Dave Bryan, as always, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you for putting this on, and everybody, thank you for showing up, and thank you for asking the questions, because if you didn't do that, then we wouldn't be here. So it all goes hand in hand. Peace and love, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, guys, we will let you know next time we are on. I may do a mock draft special live stream with you guys, just mess around with something too. I don't know. We'll figure it out, but I'll let you guys know in the community tab of the channel. So thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.